Hi everyone, Rudy here, and now finally I want to present my own ideas for a new Demon Hunter set. So I've already made one video before season 20, because back then I thought the Demon Hunter would get the new set, and well, that didn't happen, and now it's gonna be the time. So in like a week or two probably we're gonna see the reveal of the new set, and I felt this was a good time to release this video. So here we have 14 brand new ideas that I made myself, and they are not part of the original video, but you can obviously check that out as well if you want. And I just want to show you like what I think has like nice potential, what could be really fun, just things I came up with essentially. Obviously you can add your own ideas, your own comments, tell me what you like, would be interesting to hear. And yeah, personally I believe it's gonna be probably a Strafe or an Elemental Arrow focus set, and Elemental Arrow not with Ball Lightning. I think it's the most likely scenario, even though we already have strong support for Elemental Arrow, and such a build would be possible with just buffs to Crider Shot or Augustine's Panacea. But I believe that this is still what's going to happen. But personally, I would prefer some other stuff. Mostly Spike Traps. I would really like to see Spike Traps, but yeah, we don't know. We'll see like soon. And here we go. So let's start. I have first up an Elemental Arrow set actually, and this one is a little bit special in the way that it changes your rune on Elemental Arrow. So basically what I want to do is I want to have a set where you cycle through all of the elements with Elemental Arrow. So there's actually a rune for every element that Demon Hunter can use, which is cold, fire, lightning, physical, and you can make like a progression through those elements if you like. So you can spam Elemental Arrow as like a DPS skill for with something like Crider Shot. So obviously this would accompany like a buff to this probably, and also the quiver. I also don't want to make this a Ball Lightning build because we've already had that, and these days Ball Lightning will be way too laggy. So we need to use the other runes if you want to use Elemental Arrow. So we have this, and essentially you can swap the rune by using another skill, for example like a multi-shot or so, and you also get like a nice burst. And I kind of balance it out a bit to be like a short duration burst, so you can either go with your convention cycles, so like every time your convention switches, you also can switch your rune, or you can just in like without convention you could do like fast burst all the time, so you do like a shorter cycle essentially. Yeah, so that's like the overall idea here. And you're like incentivized to swap your rune by the 4-piece bonus, so you get like a stacking damage buff and a stacking elemental damage buff and stacking damage reduction. So this elemental damage is supposed to reduce the impact that elemental damage rolls has from the bracers or from the amulet and so on. So this is why I included this. Yeah. So I think this could be very fun, like an active Elemental Arrow playstyle, because I feel like just Elemental Arrow with Crider Shot would be way too boring. So it needs to be like a little bit of a twist, and like it would be just like a left click AFK build, and I don't want this. So I think we need something more interesting, and this could be an idea for that. Okay, next up, Spike Trap. I have a bunch of Spike Trap ideas, and here's one of them. So essentially the way Spike Traps work is you put them on the ground, and you trigger them by using another skill and then explode, and that's it. So they can do some burst damage like this, and they can have multiple on the ground, and they will all explode. And here I make it so that they detonate up to 20 times. So essentially they stay on the ground, and you can re-trigger them. And this will like this, you can essentially like put them on the ground wherever you want, and then just keep spamming like a generator or like another skill, and keep exploding them, and then like your spike just will recharge, and you can reposition them when you want, and so on. And I also include a cluster arrow here as kind of like a pulling ability. I think this could be really cool. So just to group stuff a little bit tightly, it could also enable a support Demon Hunter a little bit more with something like this. And yeah, I think that just giving the Demon Hunter some kind of control with like a targeted like kind of cyclone strike effect would be pretty cool. So yeah, so I went with that essentially, and then a big damage buff here. Okay, next Spike Trap set actually. Here we have more of a spike trap only playstyle. So essentially you get a really fast recharge of your spike traps, and you can just lay them on the ground like every 1 or 2 seconds or so. So basically run around, pop them everywhere you want, and you need to start a chain reaction. And here again we have multiple explosions, so they stay on the ground and keep exploding automatically without you doing anything. So this chain reaction is supposed to start out very strong with all the spike traps on the ground. You get like a stacking damage buff for each explosion remaining in the spike trap chain, and you can refuel it by putting more spike traps on the ground while the explosions are happening. And like this, you have like kind of like an up and down cycle of your DPS, and you can kind of like produce a nuke yourself by just putting more spike traps on the ground, and they will all start exploding, and then like the damage goes lower and lower and lower, and then you put new ones and it spikes again and it goes lower and lower and so on. So I think this could be extremely cool as well, because you have more control of your DPS, you can burst when you need it, and I think this could be extremely fun like this. It's like kind of like a trapper playstyle. Okay, next up, Strafe and Fan of Knives. This is essentially the same as the Lon Fan of Knives build, but here we have much bigger potential for like Strafe farming builds. So I gave it like a really big damage buff to Strafe. You could also buff the Strafe weapons. There's like 2 one-hand crossbows, so to go along with that. But here we essentially strafe around. We have Fan of Knives damage bonus, and you also release automatic Fan of Knives. So every second you can do like a Fan of Knives around you, so you don't have to press it all the time. This can help you out a bit with the overall like farming, the DPS essentially. And then for pushing or for like group play even, you could like stack up this damage buff from the 4-piece bonus here, and like basically the longer you channel Strafe around the enemies, the more damage you deal with the big explosion of Fan of Knives at the end that you do with like the Convention plus Lord Greenstone overlap. So I think this could feel really cool to kind of do like these really big nukes with Fan of Knives, and you still have some damage in between to clear out like the smaller stuff. Here's another Strafe variation. So this one is more Strafe focused, and we begin like a nice movement speed and attack speed bonus and so on, and you're like incentivized to stack movement speeds if you can. So something like Shadow Power, Shadow Glide, Smoke Screen, Displacement, and so on, and maybe Hot Pursuit passive. And then we have the big damage bonus for Strafe only. And the way this works is that you're not really supposed to strafe all the time, but you strafe like in cycles, and you kind of decide how strong it's gonna be by just waiting it out or by killing enemies. So it's like for like T16 farm or so, you could just strafe all the time. But for kind of like a pushing scenario, you don't strafe all the time, but you make the pull, and then you use Strafe as a big nuke, and then it becomes weaker as you channel longer. So you have like a big burst, and then also like it becomes slowly a little bit less damage, and then you stop channeling again, and you regain the damage for the next burst. So kind of like a cyclical playstyle again. Because same here, I think a Strafe set that just buffs Strafe to insane levels is not really going to be interesting. You need to add a little bit more dynamic to it, and this is one way of doing it. Here we have a hanging arrow set. I think this is probably one of my most creative ideas actually. So I think a generator set could work really well with hanging arrow. And the way that this is supposed to work is first of all, you get all the runes on hanging arrow, because I think that's like just overall pretty cool stuff. You have like more pierces, you have some little AoE burst when you crit, you have more pierce chance, and then you have a rune that increases damage for every pierce on the same target. So it's overall pretty cool effects. And then I have also like a very high mobility playstyle. So it's kind of like a fast ranger sniper playstyle where you walk around really fast, and then you have the 6-piece bonus that basically increases your time needed to shoot a hanging arrow. So you could do this with just like a flat rate, or you could do this with like a stacking damage buff. So you can kind of control how strong it's going to be and how slow you are but essentially I want to have like a charging or like an aiming time for the hanging arrow to not just, you know, run around and spam like 3 times a second, but I want this to be like, you know, like a 1 second charge up for like a really big hanging arrow that pierces like 20 times and does like these explosions and pierces more and you know, all this stuff. And this would have like insane single target DPS because of the devouring arrow rune. And yeah, I think something like this could also be really fun as kind of like a single target sniping gameplay style, but with all these pierces you can also, you know, cover the AoE a little bit. So yeah, I think this would be awesome. Also, one last twist I added to the hanging arrow set here is that on the 2-piece bonus, while you have no skill on cooldown, its damage is increased by 200% of your critical hit chance. It doesn't need necessarily to be exactly that kind of scaling, but for me the important part was the no skill on cooldown. So I wanted to have you know, like no vengeance, I wanted to have no preparation and all this kind of stuff, and just kind of like rely on the basics essentially, you know, rely on your bow. It's like you with an arrow against the world kind of, and this was kind of the idea behind that. So yeah. Next up we have the bowler set. This one is kind of like a big AoE bowler set, and they have kind of like a chaining effect of the bowler, so they jump around to a new enemy and they can explode multiple times, and then also use bowler as like a spender, not a generator. So you want to basically cycle through this generator and another generator, and then you can also do multiple explosions while they're still on the target. So essentially you shoot a bowler once on a target and it will stick for like 3 seconds, do like an explosion every second, and while you're hitting the enemy with the bowler still on it, it will explode again for like additional damage. And I added like some actual single target nuke here when it can't jump, so that you're not totally screwed on Rift Guardians and so on. And yeah, like this basically generate as much hatred as you can, and then shoot a big bowler, and then try to explode that bowler over and over until it runs out, and then repeat essentially. Next up we have a Caltrops set. So this one is also like kind of like a trapper playstyle where you bait enemies towards you, and then you put the Caltrops on the ground, and they gain this 1 rune that deals damage. And you can have like this kind of like death zone all around you where you kite enemies into, and they take like more damage over time, and essentially just slowly melt away from the Caltrops. So you want to kite them in, and then you want to slow them, and you want to immobilize them or freeze them or something. So we have this in the 6-piece here, and like this you essentially deal most of the damage with Caltrops, and you have to generate a lot of discipline to actually use those Caltrops all the time. So you have to use preparation, you have to use like bowlers with the discipline rune or something, and yeah, you could walk around and do pulls like this. Or when you do like a speedfying build, there's also a belt that drops Caltrops for you all the time in your vault. So essentially you could just like let stuff melt behind you as you run through them, and like for pushing you would kind of control yourself with your own Caltrops uses. Here we have an Entangling Shot Thorn set. So I added like 2 runes here, which is like a longer duration and more targets for the Entangling Shot. And we added the Fan of Knives to give you like some kind of like dynamic. Instead of just staying there and left clicking with Entangling Shot, you try to go in with the Fan of Knives, then go out again, and they take like a little bit more damage from your thorns. And then we have like kind of like thorns effect with the 6-piece bonus, where when you hit a target that you take damage, kind of like with the hack weapon or like the Crusader thorns build, and you basically want to snipe the right target where you want to deal most of the damage, or when it's a big pull, you just shoot into the middle, and you are incentivized to try to hit the same target though, because of this effect where you deal double damage on consecutive hits. So you're trying to hit the same target, and that's kind of like the mini game of this set, where you know, you don't just left click into the pack, but you actually try to snipe the right thing. And basically this thorns spreads to all enemies of this Entangling Shot chain. Another Entangling Shot set here that could be quite fun, I think, but this is like a little more simplified. So this is not thorns, this is just regular DPS. And here we have 3 effects: Pierce, Chain, and Burst. So you probably have like a little buff on the buff bar or something, or maybe some kind of like visual effect on a character to know which one is active right now. But essentially, Pierce is supposed to just go through all enemies when you shoot a hanging shot. Chain is kind of like it hits one enemy and then it jumps to the next one, and it does that, I don't know, like 2 or 3 times or something, or maybe 5. And then Burst is kind of like a little AoE, and arrow disappears. And yeah, you can change the effect at will, so you can kind of like choose which one you want depending on the situation. So you just do like 1 or 2 other casts and you cycle through, kind of like the hanging shot idea, the elemental arrow idea. And yeah, this is how you'd kind of decide which effect you want. And then here we have, while smoke screen and shell power active, you gain all effects at once. And like this, you can have like kind of like a short burst of, you know, everything, where it just goes crazy when you shoot during your smoke screen. So smoke screen is 1.5 second duration, and obviously you don't have infinite discipline. So you try to pop both things at the same time and do like a short burst of like, you know, 3-4 casts. And yeah, it just like, you know, goes through all the enemies, it chains around, it like all of them explode and so on. So it could be pretty cool. Here we have a Chakram set. Chakram against the twin effect, the twin Chakram rune. So you choose you shoot 2 Chakrams every time, and you can choose one of the other runes. So I think this could be quite fun to have like kind of like a positioning focused set, where it's really important how you, like where you are standing, how you position yourself towards the enemy, and so on. And other than that, it's relatively simple. We just have like also like a short attack speed burst when you use a resource spender. So because of the quiver, Chakram will be a generator, and then you have to add like another skill, like multi-shot, for example, where you get like a short DPS burst when you use it in between. And you can kind of like decide to just go only left click, or you go you know, kind of more dynamic with another spender and a big damage buff to Chakram. Alright, here we have a Vengeance set. So this Vengeance set is a little bit inspired by Archon, and yeah, I tried to make like a set that doesn't require any other skills and so on, because these are really imbalanced with the legendary support that we have on the Demon Hunter. So I made this only about Vengeance, and it's also a no dawn build, because you don't actually want to press Vengeance on cooldown all the time when you have a short cooldown with dawn. But here we increase the duration by 200%, so Vengeance is going to last 1 minute. The effects are a little bit increased, so you deal more damage, you have more damage reduction and so on. And you are going to spend Hatred to build up your Vengeance with attack speed, movement speed, and this is like a stacking effect, and you essentially become stronger and stronger as Vengeance progresses. And it also lasts for the duration of the next Vengeance, for another 60 seconds essentially. So you have kind of like this Archon stack overlap, and you have like this cycle where you become stronger and stronger at the end. And here then I made like a big damage buff to rockets, because Vengeance fires some rockets, and I also increase the amount, so I actually have some AoE coverage, increase the damage, and they can also go all to the same target, which right now they can't. So when you have 3 rockets from something like multi-shot, for example, or the Vengeance with the 4 rockets, they can fly to 1 target each, but they can't go to the same target. So like this, you can have like really insane like elite hunting and rift guarding killing possibilities. And I felt like this fits the theme pretty well here. And you know, kind of like you build up the rage, you know, you spend the hatred and so on. So I felt like thematically this is probably the most sophisticated set here, and I would just really like this idea. And I have like 1 additional item for extra pierces for the rockets and some damage for the rockets and so on, which could also help, you know, Marauder builds, for example, with Cluster Arrow. Alright, here, number 13, Mark for Death set. Here we have Valley of Death. It looks like this. So it's like an AoE you put on the ground, and this would be like increased, would be a pretty big AoE if it's twice the size, and also the effects are doubled, duration are doubled, so it's just like some small stuff. And you are like running inside of the Valley of Death, and you try to pull enemies inside of it as well. So this is kind of like a death zone, and then you essentially do like shadow explosions and so on when you use other skills. I just show Spike Trap here, but there could be any other way of doing that. And you basically you decide, you know, when you get this burst, and there's going to be like a shadow explosion inside this Valley of Death every time you use it. So this is like, you know, some kind of like special build that doesn't rely on like a specific skill besides the Mark for Death. So you would probably go like really tanky, try to pull enemies in, and then you do like these bursts here essentially. And also when you kill stuff inside, you get like a kind of like a chain reaction of smaller explosions that will help you out. Okay, and here finally the last set. This is a very special one. So this is not really based around any skill or something. So this is based around your resources. So I wanted to play around with the duality between hatred and discipline. And first of all, we get like a big bonus to the maximum hatred and discipline pool. And you also generate hatred by spending discipline. This is very important because of the next bonus here. We have essentially when you spend a lot of hatred, so when you almost empty your hatred bar, you will increase your discipline regeneration by a lot. So you get like tons of discipline recovery, and also your resource cost and damage now increases for a short period with a stacking effect. And essentially you spend your hatred really fast, and then you try to spend your discipline really fast, and this will recover your hatred, and you spend your hatred even quicker than before, and then you spend your discipline even quicker than before. So essentially it's like a faster and faster cycle of going up and down between hatred and discipline. And then eventually everything will cost so much that you cannot shoot anything anymore. So you could, you know, dump your hatred with cluster arrows or something, and then you can dump your discipline with smoke screen or shadow power or both. And you know, at first you can do like, I don't know, let's say 10 cluster arrows, then the second cycle you can do 5, and then in the next cycle you can do like 3, and then 2, and then 1, and then, like, you know, the next cluster arrow will cost like 500, and the next shadow power will cost like, you know, 100 discipline, so you can't use them anymore, and the effects run out, and you repeat the cycle. And you're going to be back to full discipline because you have this huge regeneration, and then you should not have any trouble to actually start over again, essentially. Yeah. And then whenever you spend hatred and whenever you spend discipline, you release like AoEs. So with the hatred, you release like a fire nova that is like at the target location of wherever you shoot. And when you spend discipline, you release a lightning burst around you. So it's kind of like, okay, either you want to attack something far away with the fires, and maybe sometimes you want to stack exactly on the target and also shoot on a target so that you get both effects at once. And yeah, I just decided to do this like a 2-element kind of build where it's like balanced out between the two. So like this whole set is like between the balance of the two resources, and, you know, kind of like their own themes. Yeah. So I felt this was also a pretty cool idea, and yeah, it could be very interesting with maybe some other additional item support like this. Anyway, these were my ideas here for Demon Hunters, and I'm really excited to hear what other people have come up with. So if you have any cool ideas, then share them, and yeah, hope you like this. And I'm really excited to see what we're gonna get. I believe it's gonna be pretty good either way, because yeah, Demon Hunters have been out of the meta for way too long. They have been really bad in solo. We need to replace Rapid Fire because Rapid Fire fucking sucks. And yeah, we need something new and something cool, and it's most likely gonna be both of that. So I'm excited. I am hopeful that Blizzard has come up with some really cool stuff. And yeah, I'm really excited for season 21, of course. So hope you liked this video here. I'll see you guys next time.